I have a confession. For years, over a decade, I have hated JavaScript testing, and in particular, TDD or test-driven development. It turns out the reason I hated it is because I've been doing it wrong this whole time. And chances are, if you're watching this video, you may have been too. So today, I'm going to walk you through the right way to approach JavaScript testing, and in particular, test-driven development. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have a healthier approach towards testing. It's something you'll actually enjoy like I do now. I actually look forward to it, which I never did before. Hi, I'm Chris Ferdinandi from GoMakeThings.com. I teach people how to build the web better. I used to sell a bunch of really expensive courses that people could only buy with a corporate training budget. I started to feel really icky about that. So sometime last year, I decided to just make everything free. So if you go over to GoMakeThings.com/guides, you can find all of my tutorials and courses that used to be behind a paywall. They're just there for free now. I've also got a giant collection of talks that I've given over the years, a bunch of copy-paste code snippets. Yeah, if you appreciate any of that, if you like it, you can sign up for Go Make Things membership as little as $3 a month, or even just a one-time buy me a coffee will get you access to my private Discord community, which is filled with tons of awesome front-end developers and ADHD nerds like myself. But you don't have to. You still get all the stuff. Other than the Discord, everything is just free and open, so no obligation. Watch this if you like it and you want to support me, cool. If not, no worries. I'm just glad you're here. Yeah, so with that out of the way, let's actually dig into JavaScript testing the right way. So the thing I have historically always hated about testing is I would get a script or a component or something working, and then I'd have to go write the test. And it would always feel like this chore afterwards where I'd have to try to get the test to pass against the code I just wrote. And invariably, anytime I would go to like refactor the code in some way, the test would break, and then I'd have to go rewrite the tests. The reason why that happens is because you're testing the wrong thing. So with that approach of testing, the one that I was taught early in my career, the one that I think a lot of developers do, you're testing implementation details. So just as an example, today, to like actually put this in action, we are going to build a disclosure component. And I actually should have pulled this up. So let's go to the ARIA pattern library here. So we're going to build a disclosure component. If you're not familiar with those are those things where you click a button, you see some stuff, you click the button again, and the stuff hides. It's a relatively basic component, but like in the past when I was testing this, I would run a whole bunch of tests to make sure like when you click it, this particular class is added, and when you click the button again, it's removed. And if you run this method, it's the class is added. So I was getting really specific around implementation details. And when you do that, naturally, anytime you refactor your code, the thing breaks. It's not particularly useful because you're not testing behaviors, you're testing how you implemented it. And so this is, I think, one of the reasons why people hate TDD or test-driven development is with TDD, you're supposed to write the tests first and then code until they pass. And I always felt like that's dumb because I don't know what the code is going to look like until I've started like playing around with it. And that's fine. If you can't write your tests without knowing what the code is going to look like, your tests aren't written well. And so I could talk about this in circles for days, but let's actually dig in. So we're going to be using a tool today called Playwright. I like this a lot better than some of the other alternatives like Jest or like VTest, because it runs a real browser. So most testing tools run JS DOM under the hood, which is a JavaScript simulation of all of the browser methods and APIs. But Playwright runs actual real browsers. It runs them in headless mode, so they're not all popping open on you, but it runs them in the background. And that means that you never have to mock up things. You never have to worry about, like a lot of, historically, one of the things that's always been an issue is like fetch. wasn't a method in Node, which is what JS DOM uses. And so like you'd have to mock up the fetch API in order to be able to use or test it in your code. And that's really dumb and annoying. So with Playwright, you're running real browsers. And it also means that if you write some code that would work in like JS DOM's version of the browser spec, but would fail in a browser, you're going to catch that. Like I ran into this last week where a thing I had written worked fine in Chrome and Firefox, but because of some weird Safari implementation quirk, it was actually failing in Safari. And I was able to catch that bug and fix it, and I wouldn't have otherwise. So first order of business, I am going to pull this tab out into its own window. And we'll clear all my previous work, which I should have done before I started recording. And let's also quit all the things. And then we are going to run, so we're going to run npm I to install all the stuff. Now, before I do that, I just want to show you in the package.json, I've only got 2 dependencies. One of them is Playwright, and the other one is an HTTP server package. The reason is because Playwright uses a real browser. If I'm testing UI related things, running a server means I can then navigate to an actual web page to test those things. And when you're doing stuff like web components, that's really, really useful. So we've got these 2 dependencies. And then I've got 3 scripts. One of them is start, which runs the server. And Playwright is going to use it. The other is demo, which is going to be really useful for us to actually like see. It runs the same thing. It runs server. The only difference is it runs it with this open command. So the browser window will automatically open for you with the test page. And then test, which actually runs the tests. So with that in mind, let's install. The first time you do this, if you've never installed Playwright before, you might also have to run a setup to install. It installs Playwright's like headless versions of the browsers for testing purposes. It'll tell you that in the command line. I don't have to do that because I already have them installed. But when you go to run npm run test, it will tell you about that. So I'm going to run npm test right now, and you're going to see everything passes because I haven't written any tests. So, but it works. The other thing I wanted to show you. So if I run npm run demo, it opens up this web page that just shows me, like it opens in the root directory that I'm in, and it shows me the stuff here. And where this gets useful is you can then go into tests, and I've got a directory set up for disclosure, and then I've got this default. And right now it's not doing anything, but when I start writing my code, I can actually play with a live version of the thing I'm building in the same directory where I'm running my tests. So it becomes like a double duty kind of thing, and it's awesome. So let's actually start writing some code. So I've got the ARIA authoring practices guide open for this component. Some of these are not as well done as others. Disclosure is really well done. It's very mature. And so the things we're looking for here are the keyboard interaction patterns. I can see here that when the thing that controls the toggling has focus, the enter or space keyboard interactions should toggle visibility of the content. And then from an ARIA perspective, the element that does the showing and hiding should have a role of button, which we get implicitly if we use an actual button element. When the content is visible, the element with that role should have ARIA expanded set to true, and when it's hidden, it should be false. And then optionally, you might want an ARIA controls attribute that has that points to the ID of the thing that it controls. Now, different screen reader implementations have kind of mixed support for this. So there's no harm in including it. Not all screen readers really make good use of it, but it's a useful thing to include, so I just do it anyways. So the very first thing we're going to do, before I even think about how this is supposed to work, I want to capture the actual things that we need to do. I didn't talk about this. I should have. This is the Playwright config file that just says what Playwright is going to do. I have mine set up to run npm run start when it starts testing, which opens up the local server. And then it uses that for testing. And right now I have it set just to test in Chrome. If you uncomment this stuff, it will also test in Firefox and WebKit. And you can test in mobile browsers if you want to. And so actually let's uncomment this so we can test in all 3. So in my test, my disclosure.spec, I am importing expect and test from Playwright. And then I'm describing these collection of tests. So these are going to be for this one, I'm going to build a web component. And so we'll call it show hide. So this is going to like echo out in the console. It's going to tell me the name of the thing I'm testing. So it's show hide. And then we'll run a bunch of different tests. So the first one I'm going to do is just the default component behavior. We're going to go to tests disclosure default.html, and then we can do things. So the first thing that we want to test is, I'm just going to write out pseudocode first. So we're going to document what the thing should do. So this is how I start all of my tests. I'm just capturing behavior. This is kind of like, this is the document that will guide the development of the code. So it's essentially like a spec document for the thing we want to build. So we are going to say initially we want to make sure that the content is hidden. The button, or I guess the toggle, has the correct aria, which we just learned about. Next, we want to say clicking the button should show the content. And update the, the aria expanded attribute, right? And update the aria expanded attribute. Okay, cool. Clicking the button again should hide the content and update the aria expanded attribute. And then we want to repeat this with some keyboard events, right? So focusing on the button and pressing space should show, here, we'll copy this because I'm feeling lazy, should show the content. And then let's also say, and pressing enter or return should hide the content, right? So we want to check all the keyboard interactions. These are the core behaviors. Did we miss anything here? No, that's basically it. That's why I like this component, because it's very simple, which makes it really nice to test. So we've got kind of our stubbed out code here. With that in mind, let's start with some basic HTML, right? So we've got, we're going to have a button, right, that says show more, right? It doesn't really matter what the text is. And then we're going to have a container. Let's give it an ID of content. And then we'll say, now you see me, now you don't. And I'm loading on this HTML file, a JavaScript file and a CSS file. They're both currently empty, but we've got our content here. So let's get the elements. And so within Playwright, we have access within each of our tests to this page object. And Playwright is awesome. So they've got, where are the locators? So they've got a bunch of locators you can use to get elements on the page. And these work like query selector or query selector all. You can pass, especially like literally like page locator is one of them, and it works like query selector all. The difference is every time you run a test, it will get a fresh copy of that element, so you're never looking at an expired element. And it will retry a few times so that if it doesn't find the element right away, if you're dealing with like some asynchronous code, you can just write your test. So it's super, super awesome. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to say const, we're going to say button equals page. And then for this one, we're going to do get by role. So if you remember, the one of the things here is that the toggle should have a role of button. Now, we get that automatically by having button in the in the DOM here, but rather than having to put some sort of like selector on here, we can just get it by its role, and that ensures that we're satisfying one of the requirements of the ARIA pattern library right out the gate. And then the other one is content. And so for that, we'll go page locator content. And now we've got them. So the first thing we want to do is check that the content is hidden. For most of these, we are going to await because they run asynchronously. So we're going to await, and then we're going to expect that the content, there's two ways to do this. So one of them is to be hidden. The other one, alternatively, there is a to be visible method you can use, and we want to make sure that it's not visible. So you can use the not operator as well. Either one works. In this case, I'm just going to keep it as is. We also want to make sure that the toggle has the correct ARIA. Now, the reason we're awaiting is because, remember, these run asynchronously. So until the, so basically what we're saying is keep running this function until you find that element and then run the test. So await, expect, button, and then we can say to have attribute. And we, oh, I didn't spell this right. There we go. Cool. To have attribute. What did I do wrong here? Okay, so to have attribute. Yeah, there we go. So we want it to have an attribute of ARIA expanded, and by default, it should have a value of false. We want it hidden by default. And then, let's see, why is this mad at me? What's the anger here? Hold on, let me quit and come back in. I think this is my TypeScript thing just being dumb. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. And then await, expect, button, to have attribute, ARIA controls. So this one, the to have attribute, it does two things. You can pass in an attribute and a value, or just an attribute. If you pass in just the attribute, it's going to just make sure it exists. The other thing that I should probably point out, so as you come in here, we have a bunch of assertions. These are the things I'm typing. Await, expect, and then a whole bunch of stuff. In my text editor, I have installed LSP TypeScript, and it auto-completes a lot of the stuff from Playwright itself. Like Playwright gives it information about what methods are available, and then it auto-completes for me, and even shows me information around it, which is really nice. Okay, clicking the button should show the page content and update. So what we're going to do is we're going to say await button click, and because it's a real browser, the browser will just Playwright will just it'll wait until the button shows up, and then it'll click it for us, which is awesome. So we're going to wait for the button, we're going to click it, and then we're going to double check that the content is visible and the ARIA attribute has updated. So we'll say expect, no, not that, content to be visible, and we're going to expect this to be true. And then we can do it again, and we'll reverse it. So not and false. Clicking the button again should hide, and update should expand. Okay, next, focusing on the button and pressing the space bar should show the content. So here, we're gonna go to actions. There are a whole bunch of them. One of them is focus, right? Yep, so you can focus on an element. And then the other one is keyboard events. So we can actually press on things, right? Let's see, it's got a list of them here, which is really nice. Is the spacebar one of them? Back quote equal backslash. Accepts logical. Yeah, so I actually forget what the spacebar. Oh, it is literally a space. That's right. It's just open. So we're going to here we go. So we'll do this. So we're going to go button focus. Oh, we need to await that. Okay, and then await button. What is the method here? Press. Okay, that's really easy. Press, enter. Oh no, this one's spacebar. So we'll go like that. And then what is the problem here? I think this is just TypeScript being dumb again. Yeah. Right? Is that, it is press. Yeah. Okay, cool. And then we will go await expect. So it was hidden. So we're going to expect it to be visible and to have array expanded equals true. And now we'll try it with the return key, right? Which I guess we'll say enter. And then we're going to expect it to not be visible and to have an aria expanded of false. Now, one little note here, you'll notice I'm only checking if it's visible. So I really don't care if it's setting the hidden attribute, if it's using display none, if it's adding a class. When I talk about implementation details, this is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about, where like the only concern here is the external behavior. Is it visible? How I achieve that really doesn't matter. All right, so now we're gonna run our tests and we're gonna expect them all to fail. So this is intended, this is a TDD thing where you write your tests and you expect them to fail the first time, and then you try to get them to all pass. And so the idea here is that if your tests don't fail, you didn't write them properly, because they should be like we don't have any code to work. So they should be catching your code doesn't work the way it should. And if they're not doing that, they're not doing their job. So let's open up a new tab. And I'm going to run npm run test. And I expect to see all red here. So it's going to run 3 tests using 3 workers because we've got our 3 different browsers. So they failed. It does spit out some information in the console, but if you find that difficult to read, you can also run npx playwright show report, and it'll open up this report where you can see it in like a nicer UI. And so you can see here that it expects the content to be hidden. It's not, and so it bails immediately. Now, in old school testing, every single one of these pieces would be broken up into its own individual test. That makes tests like really annoying to read. And it's born out of a time when testing, like isolating where an error was happening in your test was really difficult. These days, they all tell you, like it is literally showing you, this is the thing that's failing. So it's easier, it avoids a lot of duplicated code if you just write, I'm gonna test the default behavior of this component start to finish. And so that's what we're doing here. So now we've got our failing test, which is beautiful. And we can actually start coding it. So I know right away that I want to, I'm doing a web component. So I'm gonna wrap this in a show hide element. Right, that's what we called it, show hide. So I'm gonna wrap it in a show hide element. And then I'm gonna write some JavaScript around that. Oh, yes, one other thing we should probably test, right? So we await expect, well, actually, we'll cover that in a different test. Never mind. We got our test, we're good. So I'm gonna jump over to the code snippet section of my digital garden here, and I'm gonna grab the web component boilerplate just to make life a little bit easier for myself. So we don't need this. We don't need disconnected callback, I don't think, but we are gonna use the connected callback and handle event. And also there was a time where I used to put a lot of stuff in the constructor. These days I just put it all in connected callback and call it a day. So we've got our template here. We're gonna say show hide. And so when the connected callback runs, we want to, we're gonna get the elements. All right, so we're gonna say this button equals this query selector button. So we're looking for a button inside our component. And then we also need to get the content that it controls. And for right now, I'm just gonna set that to null. Get the, not this elements, get the elements. There's a few different ways we could approach this. So one of them, and I'll just use this as an example, but so we know we need ARIA controls, right? So let's set ARIA controls equals content. So we'll just assign it to the ID. So what we can do is we can then say this button get attribute ARIA controls. So that's the selector. So actually, I guess what we want to do is we want to say if this button, then document query selector this button get attribute, otherwise null. And so why is it mad here? No overload. Oh, because if it doesn't have that value, right? Okay, so then we'll do this. We'll do this a different way. So we'll say const selector equals. We'll do this. Cool. So if selector. All right, cool. Now, if there's no button or content and early, we might even throw a warning on the console, right? So if no this button or no this content, console warn, show hide, please provide a button and matching content, and then we'll return. Assuming we do find those things though, we are going to this button add event listener click. Now the nice thing about a click handler is it will on a button also capture spacebar and return key submissions. This event, why is this mad? What are you mad about now? TypeScript is always mad about something. So when I pass in this is a cool thing with add event listener. It accepts a callback function, but it can also accept an object. And as long as that object has a handle event method on it, it will automatically run and pass in the event. And that allows us to maintain access to the instance without having to do any sort of weird like arrow function binding trick kind of stuff. So in here, we are going to console log for now. We'll just say button clicked, right? And that's all we'll do. And here we'll log the event. Why not? The other thing we want to do, right, is hide the content on initialization. So we'll say this content. And now again, I don't, from an outside testing perspective, I don't care what methods, but for now I'm just going to set the hidden attribute, and then we'll say listen for click events. All right. So if we were to jump over to the actual live window here, let me drag this over, reload. Ooh, what do we got going on here? Please provide a button and matching content. So ARIA controls, oh, right, yep, here we go. So the selector, it needs to be an ID, right? So we got to do that. Cool. So bam, hidden, done, awesome, right off the gate. So we're going to run our test again, and we're going to expect it to still fail because it is not completing all of its tasks, right? But this is also what keeps us honest as we go through this process. So we fail, we look at our report, and we're seeing now the button doesn't have the correct ARIA. It's missing ARIA expanded. So hide the content. I'm gonna say add missing ARIA, or no, add, I guess we'll just call it like ARIA expanded attribute to button. So this button set attribute ARIA expanded false. All right, so we'll stop this. We'll run our test again. And let me actually just make this window, let me make it big so we can really see what's going on here. Cool, so we expect content. Okay, so we've gotten to the interactivity point now. So we've passed the previous stuff, right? Now what we're seeing is when we click the button, the content isn't shown. So that's our next order of business. So we get in here, and what we're going to do is let's say should be visible equals this button get attribute aria expanded equals. So if it is currently hidden, we should show it, and if not, we should hide it. So should be visible is if the current value of the attribute is false, content is hidden, we want to show it. Otherwise, we want to hide it. And actually here, let's even say, so should show. And then we can say this content set attribute, not set attribute, toggle attribute, hidden and should show. So if toggle attribute, the second argument here, normally it just toggles it on or off, but the second attribute forces it to be shown or removed. So we're going to say if it should be shown, remove it. Actually, let's do this. Let's make this more clear. So should hide. So if it's true, we should hide it. Okay, so should hide. And then similarly, we are going to, it's mad because that might not exist. And then we're going to say this button set attribute aria expanded equals, so hold on. So if it should hide, we want to flip this, right? So we're going to say the opposite of should hide to string. Right? Why are you mad? Argument of Boolean is not right. There we go. No? Okay, we'll do this a different way, right? So if should hide false, otherwise true. There we go. Cool. Okay, and looks like we don't even need the event at all. So let's go ahead and just pull that off. So theoretically, this should toggle. So let's go ahead and run our test again. And now they all pass. So where this gets awesome is now, let's say I don't like this. I don't like that the user has to think about aria. So I say, you know what? We're gonna remove this, and we're gonna say target equals content. They're just gonna add it to the web component itself, and we're gonna go in here, and you know what? It can even be here. We'll make it so it can be any selector. So we'll pass it in the normal way. So we're going to say this, so it's no longer button, right? So it's this get attribute target. And then if there's a selector, we're going to just pass it in as is. Okay. So we've cleared up, cannot find name, right? Because it's called selector. There we go. So we've done away with the aria controls bit. We're just going to do that. So we've refactored our code, and if I jump over here and look, you can see the behavior visually, it does what I want. But when we run our test, it's taking a while, which means something's probably not working the way it expects. So it fails, right? So why did it fail? Because the content doesn't have aria controls. We removed it, and we really need to add it back. So having written our code the way we did, we're now catching a useful error. We refactor our code. A visual test would say this code works the way it was supposed to. And if we were just testing internals, we might miss this. So what we're going to do here is add required aria to button. So aria expanded. This button set attribute aria controls, and it's going to be this content ID. It's so chatty. Oh, I guess because ID could be null. So I guess that's another thing we want to check, right? So if not this content or not this content, we'll add a separate check for this, right? So we'll say, so if content is missing ID, so we'll say if no this content ID, content must have a valid ID. Cool. All right. So now if we run our test, they passed again, right? And so you can do this over and over again with your refactoring. So if you wanted to change the way the hidden thing works, so you don't want to use the hidden attribute anymore, you want to use a class, or you want to visually hide it and then animate the expansion out, right? You can do all that, and Playwright is going to continue to work the way you would expect. So it's just really useful. This is super nice. It's caught so many different like issues and errors for me when I'm like modifying my code, changing how it works. It just gives you the freedom to refactor without worrying about breaking things, and it like really guides your development. So it's been really, really helpful. If you found this video useful and you enjoyed it, please like, comment, share it with friends. If you really like my work and you want to help me, spread the joy, I'd really love if you consider to go make things membership. Totally optional. Just glad to have you here either way. But if you if you want to get access to my Discord, or you just want to say thanks for the content, cool. If not, no worries. And I want to make sure I drop a link to all of the source code from this video down in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.